Did you know that I have several Five Nights at Wario's games that never saw the light of day, at least not completely? Maybe you've heard of some of these, maybe you've heard of all of them, or maybe you haven't heard of any of them. In any case, I thought we would go through them today, 3 of them specifically, and see what they were all about. Five Nights at Wario's Tower Defense. This is a game I worked on actually for a good while, or not in the span of a whole lot of, like for several years, but I spent quite a lot of hours on it in total, because I had really, I just had a lot of fun making it. I loved making this game. And it has come quite far into development before I decided to scrap it. And the reason I decided to scrap it was because it was quite kind of twofold. One, because I don't think a lot of people really were interested in playing this, and secondly, because I started to realize that this game didn't really do anything unique. It didn't do anything that, for example, Bloons Tower Defense 6 and other tower defense games didn't do. So there wasn't really anything unique about this aside from the characters and, the upgrades that are there. But aside from that, as a concept, it was basically nothing you haven't seen before. It was actually a bit less. A lot less than what you have seen before, in many ways. But it was still a game that I was really passionate about while I was making it. Five Nights at Wario's Tower Defense was taking a lot of inspiration from Bloons Tower Defense 6, which is a game I really enjoy. And I wanted to make a tower defense game with characters from Five Nights at Wario's. And I've always loved games, and I've always wanted to make a game which has this character roster. If you look at my early days of my YouTube channel, you will even see that even before, I think it was before I had really made any finished game before, I was so ambitious that I wanted to make a Super Smash Bros. Fan game, and I had 4 demos of a game out on my YouTube channel of that Smash Bros. Fan game, and it didn't have any gameplay. There were 4 demos, and all that it contained was a character select screen. So there was no gameplay. I just loved making games with character rosters, where you can select the characters that you want, and all of them being different. There was something really satisfying about that, and I've always liked that. Characters having different stats and abilities, and characters that you can master, upgrade, etc. That was also kind of part of the motivation for Five Nights at Wario's Tower Defense, where had a tower defense gameplay rather than Smash Bros, which is, I think, quite more complicated to make, where you had a selection of towers or characters that were all different and served different roles and purposes in the gameplay. And I remember trying or starting with a really small prototype to see if I could make a simple engine where you could click and place a tower wherever you want on the track and have enemies going in a line from start to finish, and have that tower you placed out shoot and attack the enemies. And it worked. It wasn't really that complicated to make with Click Team Fusion, which I'm using. And so that really started to spin, and it became Five Nights at Wario's Tower Defense. And right now, it is scrapped now, at least for now, and it has been for a while. But it has 11 towers, or characters if you want, with the 12th one barely started on, which was supposed to be Demon Wario, which you can see here. Now this was supposed to be kind of a mix between different types of characters in Five Nights at Wario's. Some of the normal ones, like Wario and Waluigi, which were supposed to be their alive variants. I wanted some of the cursed ones, the normal kind of cursed main Five Nights at Wario's cast in there, like the Mario with no face, which is very iconic, as well as some of the Virus characters, like Virus Toad and Virus Peach. I wanted a good mix, and I think I succeeded in that. Each tower you can place out has 2 different paths of upgrades you can take, and each path has 5 different upgrades, and I actually spent a very long time just balancing everything from the cost to their effects to rounds, enemies, abilities, and so on. I spent a lot of time with that, and I think it turned out alright for what it is. At least up until the point where it got. The last thing I did was to try to start and upgrade the visual graphics a bit and make the tracks or the levels go from placeholder graphics to things that actually look nice-ish, if that makes sense. Right now there is gameplay here. There are, I think, 7 tracks or 7 levels with 4 difficulty options each. We have 11 towers to choose from, as well as several different equipment that you can place out, which helps you in different ways and works with different kinds of strategies. There's a lot of potential there that hasn't been, executed. There are a lot of upgrades or like final upgrades for towers that has not been made yet. There's an entire tower that hasn't been made yet. And just a lot of ideas that was left on the cutting room floor before I scrapped this game. FNA Wario's Fighters, or FNA Fighters for short. This was an evolution of an older game that I made called Mushroom Kingdom Showdown. It was supposed to be a Mario Smash Brothers fan game. The original was supposed to be that, because again, I loved this whole idea of having a game that I have made where I can select which characters are going to be selectable in this cast of, in this ensemble of characters to choose between, right? And have them all play differently. And so I've always wanted to make a Smash Bros game. And it was very rough. It was very rough. It was not fun to play, in my opinion at least. Rough, boring, repetitive, not deep in the slightest. But it was fun to make, and it was a complete game that I felt happy with at the time, even though it is objectively not a good game. But FNA Fighters was supposed to be kind of an evolution of that. I wanted to see how much have I learned, both in terms of click team as well as logic in my head when it comes to programming stuff. So I took the engine of Mushroom Kingdom Showdown that I'd made, and I wanted to kind of use that as a base and make an evolution of it. I wanted to have hitboxes, which was not a part of the original Mushroom Kingdom Showdown. I wanted to have hitboxes. I wanted to have knockback that grew instead of having HP that slowly drained and have all attacks always do the same amount of knockback. I wanted it to be like Smash Bros, where you take damage, and the more damage you have, the more knockback you will take, and the goal is to knock each other off the stage. I wanted to have shielding, dodging, grabbing, all those kind of things that you find in Smash Brothers. And to a degree, it did become much better than Mushroom Kingdom Showdown was. Now there was actual, hit stun that was different for each attack. It was knockback that grew, and each attack had a different knockback growth parameter. So some attacks would deal more knockback the higher damage the opponent had than others. And you had more attacks to choose from. You could shield, you could grab. It was generally just a more polished version of the Mushroom Kingdom Showdown engine, at least as far as I got before I scrapped it. There was also just 2 characters that I made, which was Mario and Wario. And both of them were, of course, supposed to be their FNA Wario's version. And it did turn out alright, as far as I got when put, relatively compared to what it was based on, Mushroom Kingdom Showdown, it turned out alright for how far I got. I did successfully make some kind of knockback growth system. I did make the movement feel better, and double jumps was made as well. Different kind of small things that made a whole experience feel better, but once again, it was kind of the same problem with FNA Tower Defense, where there isn't really anything here that hasn't been done before. There are a lot of Smash Bros games out there, or a lot of Smash Bros fan games, to be specific, out there, often made by a bigger team of people who are much more experienced and much more talented than I am. And so it came to a point where this will take a lot of time and effort to make if I'm going to continue to do so. But will that be worth it when there are objectively better alternatives out there to play if you want a Smash Bros clone? And so it really came down to a matter of priority. Do I want to prioritize putting a lot of work into this and get a result that is a mediocre Smash Bros. Clone, most likely with no online functionality, and most likely just 2 players instead of 4, when there are so many better alternatives out there, you know? It was mostly just a thing I did for my own sake, which is what you're supposed to do in the first place, I think. I think that's when you make the best products, but still. I think that was the main reason why I scrapped the thing in the first place. And finally, we have actually a Final Fantasy Wario's mainline game that was scrapped. This was very early in development. So early, in fact, that I hadn't even decided if this was going to be a game or not. I had come up with a name for the game, but the name didn't have any thought behind it. It didn't have any lore relevance or anything. I called it Final Fantasy Wario's Zero. And I just did that to have a work-in-progress name for it. A code name, basically, until a final name was made, or until I could find a reason for it to be called Final Fantasy Wario's Zero. But this was a very, very, very early just tech demo. And it came out from me talking with a good pal of mine on Discord called Dedicated Ghost, or DJ Plasm, which is also known by, who is a very talented 3D artist, among other things. And we decided we wanted to make a Final Fantasy Wario's game together. So he put his 3D skills to good use, and we started on planning one. And so we made a quick tech demo, if you can even call it that, of Wario in a hallway. So we made a quick tech demo of Wario in this back alley. We didn't have any story ideas, anything at all, as I said. This was purely just a test to see how would Final Fantasy Wario's look if we started to use actual 3D environments, but still making it 2D, like all the other games are. But, you know, using 3D environments, which allows us to, you know, look more around in the environment, using still photos and 3D models that are of higher polygon counts than the Brawl models are. And what is interesting is that I had this short little tech demo, which was basically where you could only just flash a flashlight in the back alley, and Wario could be there or he could not be there, and that was it. But I did find a file that was called Final Fantasy Wario's Zero, and one that was called Final Fantasy Wario's Zero 2.0. The 2.0 version is the one you see here, with Wario in the back alley and this attempt at a 3D 2D game, if that makes sense, where we didn't use stock photos, where you only had a camera and a flashlight. But the original Final Fantasy Wario's Zero still used a stock photo, and the game file for it is only a look around mechanic that was made inside this cabin-like location, which you can see here. There was nothing else made, no cameras, not anything at all. It was just this still photo and you being able to look around. I can't remember what my thought process with this one specifically was. I think maybe this was before the Dedicated Ghost and I came together to make something, and that I wanted originally to make something called Final Fantasy Wario's Zero, and then when we started to work together, I just took that name and placed it onto our new project. I think that was it. And what you see here was the original early idea. An idea for a new Final Fantasy Wario's game called FNA Zero. But again, there was absolutely zero story elements or gameplay elements or anything of the sorts planned whatsoever. But it is still fun to look back at. It's fun to look at projects that at least had some thought behind them, because if they didn't, they wouldn't exist in the first place. But this has been 3 scrapped Final Fantasy Wario's games, 2 spin-offs and one that was supposed to be a mainline game. Do you have any thoughts? Do you think some of these are interesting, more interesting than others? Do you have some questions for any of these 3 games? Anything at all? Any thoughts at all? I'd be happy to answer them, so just post them in the comments below. This has been Triple Wario. subscribe if you want to see more from me. We'll try to make this channel grow bigger and have more fun and more fun and more fun as we can make more videos for a bigger and bigger audience. So subscribe if you want to see more, and I want to thank you for watching. Goodbye.